Christian Pulisic had this pretty incredible, I'm ready to get things off my chest, sit-down interview with Graham Hunter from ESPN, and I think we should talk about some of the
Incredible
highlights
beard,
of it.
by the way. I mean, that's
He
the
is,
first
his,
highlight
his
is
beard
like
game is solid, almost Heath Pierce-esque.
Jimmy, I've said this a million times. I spent my entire professional career thinking I grew a nice beard, and people would be like, sick goatee, which means I didn't have a beard. I had what people saw as a goatee because I couldn't grow a beard.
It's
I've
true.
got a
Yeah,
neck beard right now, but like his thing was like lined up at a few different levels, and I was like, man, this guy is like, incredible looking beard.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Well, some of the things that he said, and maybe the main takeaway was that he's cool with having Greg Berhalter come back. He's reasonably content, is the quote. He also quoted, the strides we have taken in recent years with him appointed, I think, has been evident. I think it's quite clear. He also went on to say, I think Berhalter did a good job of showing the team and helping everyone to understand, look, this is how we're going to play in a short period of time as it pertains to the World Cup, and just pretty pro Berhalter. And obviously the big headline was Pulisic says that the actions happening right now around the U.S. men's national team are childish, very youth soccer-esque. I'm paraphrasing now, but I was pretty surprised that he was this candid. I think this is the most candid I've ever seen Christian in one sitting, where he got asked some tough questions and he answered them pretty honestly.
Well, from what I understood, he was one of the guys who, and again, this is purely speculating, which I probably shouldn't do, but I'm going to anyway. Was one of the guys.
We love it. You have all the inside knowledge.
He was one of the guys that didn't find Gio's first apology to be acceptable, and his approach of just being like, sorry for my thing. It was kind of like, we want more, like, tell us more, like, open up more. And I don't think that in like a way of like, that's not good enough, but more of like, hey, you need to really buy into this as one of the leaders of the team. He was showing that. And so I think he feels comfortable. Obviously this is a guy who's still young, but has been through so more than any player we've ever had in our history, in terms of his challenges abroad and the level that he's playing at, the club that he's playing at, the things that he's accomplished. And so I think there's a comfort in him being able to speak up. But look, I think that the question still remains, if not Greg, if not GGG, then who is it, right? How do you get better? How do you come in with a coach and a sporting director and a GM and not start from scratch? How do you do that? That's a lot. It's a lot at a club team level, let alone a national team level, where you have far less time to implement strategies and tactics and ways in which you want to play. And I'm not saying you can't do that. The question is, how do you do that? How do you come in and have somebody has to take something from what Greg did, like him or hate him? Somebody has to at least continue that. I think it would be foolish to try to start over, especially given that we're 3 years out, or what is it? Yeah, we're how many years out from the next World Cup? Three.
Yeah, we're almost there. Three
and 3
years
months.
and a couple months.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. I wonder if there's any strategy there. I will say, with regard to his thoughts about Gio and the whole situation being childish, or Claudio and the whole situation being childish, I think that he's trying to set the tone publicly that this isn't good enough. This is unacceptable. And I don't know if it's necessarily a shot at Gio, but like, hey, when you come in, we just this has got to just be nixed. Like, we can't move forward. And also taking a shot at this whole situation. And to speculate once again, I remember hearing that there was confrontation. Sounds really dramatic, but we'll just use the word anyway. Confrontation between the Pulisic family and the Reina family during the World Cup. And that there were words shared between the parents about that. Now there's been a lot of comebacks that Christian's dad, I believe his name is Mark, has also been out there publicly stating he's not happy with his kids' playing time as it pertains to Chelsea, and so on and so forth. So it's not like
he's tweeted.
Right.
Like,
it's not like he's got clean hands. It's not like his parents aren't out there, but it hasn't happened in a while. I don't know if that makes it okay. Maybe they learned their lesson with regard to that. Now, you brought it up last week, but just to bring it up here, because we have some nice context with a pro GGG, pro Greg Berhalter, Christian Pulisic. This is a Berhalter's U.S. men's national team stats. 72% win percentage, which is the highest of any national team coach in the history of the program. Fastest coach to reach 30 wins. Record for most wins in a calendar year, that was 17 back in 2021. He had the youngest U.S. team to ever qualify for the World Cup. He played 10 of 11 youngest lineups worldwide during World Cup qualifying. And during his 4-year tenure, this is just kind of more of a fun fact. 3 assistant coaches were named MLS head coaches in El Lobo, Josh Wolf, Nico Estevez, who's at FC Dallas, and Luchi Gonzalez, who was already a coach prior to taking that job. So maybe you take that one with a grain of salt. But still, impressive statistics, and stats are stats. They're there for a reason, and that's why we accumulate them, because it does prove that he's had some success. And he had to, and I think Christian talked about this too, he had to start from scratch in some ways with a whole group of younger players and get them to buy in. And there was a good quote from Christian where he said, there were moments when Berhalter benched me and I wanted to kill the guy. I hated him. I was so angry. But then the next game comes along and I find myself in a better place. The way that Greg handled a lot of situations, I have to give him a lot of credit. And I think that probably is interesting, because there really hasn't been any other players that have come out and been this pro Greg, I think, up until this point.
Well, I think it's a huge challenge, right? I think we had this failed gap 2018, right? And you had an opportunity to go with veteran guys and bring them in. And I think we cleaned house necessarily. And now when we look at where we're going to 2026, we've got a World Cup of experience for young players, still a young team. And he talks about like the core of that group is still there, right? The core of the team, there's not a lot of changes. Now there's competition for spots. There's competitions for the 23 or the 26 that are going to go, or maybe it'll be 35 players by the time FIFA's done with it, going and building up, NFL rosters for World Cups now. Even then, I probably still wouldn't have made it, Jimmy, but that's not the point. For me, he accomplished a lot with the group. And sometimes we get caught in this idea, play this player, that player. But if you're any player, when you're not called in, or you're not starting, or you're not the role that you want to be in the national team, it is very hard, right? And it is about ego management. And then when you take away all the maturity of the decisions you and I made, Jimmy, as we got later in our career, and we take ourselves in the context of the 20-year-old version of us, the 21-year-old, the 22-year-old version of us, the fact that there are varying degrees of a Gio Reyna in every player, right? That there is this disappointment that you want to lash out, you want to make a point, you want to make a statement, you channel that into doing better. To put that into a team that can accomplish, get out of the group stages, get the points that they got, have shutouts in the group stages in the way that they did, accomplish those things. Yeah, we didn't get to the quarterfinals. We didn't get to that ultimate goal. We didn't play necessarily the most beautiful of play all the time, but there are still some things that you have to go, if not him, then who, right? Who is going to now, who's brought them this far along, take them to that next level? Can he do it? That's for people to
well,
decide.
I say no.
Right.
I think that we've hit a ceiling in a lot of different ways with Greg. And I know it'd be hard to be in his shoes and think, I've done so much. Look at these stats. Look what I've done. Look at my captain, Christian Pulisic, coming out, or one of my captains coming out and saying this about me. Like I can do it again. But we've seen, especially with this country, that second cycle doesn't tend to go well, even if it's with the same core of players. And I feel
Don't you feel that this is a different thing though? Like this, because of the youth of the player and the experience, that there is a little bit more.
This too.
I mean, the hosting thing is like, it is what it is, but
I know
it is, but it's still, to me, like, to take a team that was like basically young and inexperienced, get them an experience. I'm not saying rehire Greg Berhalter. If you move on from him. But the question is that move on a transition to the next? Is it a transition, or is it a fresh start for a new coach? And I think those are two very different things, because the comfort he's built and the development he's built, sure, I was very unimpressed with a large number of qualifiers, of the way in which they played, but also the World Cup qualifiers that I played in, most people were unimpressed too, because you go to qualify. You don't go
a grind.
You don't go to like, you go back to the Jamaica game at home in Austin, and they played Jamaica off the pitch in that one. But by and large, unattractive way to qualify. But the goal is the goal, and it doesn't really matter how you get there. I would love to weave that all in together, and we'll see now in this 3 years of play big friendlies and let's test things and let's try things, because the risk is different. Like, we'll see that through a lot of the friendlies you get over the next few years. And that's where you can try things. But in qualifying, it's hard to check as many boxes as you want, right? Because the ultimate goal is don't make mistakes, score more than the other team, get the points you need, qualify for the World Cup, and then we'll figure it out. Game.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I know that some people are in the comments right now on the YouTube saying that Pulisic shouldn't have done the interview. And it is interesting timing for him, or at least to have this interview come out at this time. I don't know when it was shot and when it was released. Clearly, it was post.
Do you think he's taking shots? Like, do you think he's getting stuff off his chest, or do you think it's a little more like, I'm a leader and I'm comfortable speaking about these types of difficult things? Because I wouldn't want to talk about this right now if I was a player. You know, I fortunately get to sit in this chair and point fingers. But if I was a player and I think about just all the complexities of all that and to speak up, it's a pretty brave thing. But you have to wonder, like, do you think there's a meaning behind it or a reason behind it?
He seems pretty guarded about doing interviews. So it felt like at least there was some energy from him. I'm going to sit down and do what? An hour-long interview? I got to interview him once, and Chelsea's like, we'll give you 5 minutes. Okay, sweet. I'm going to really get into some fun stuff about his life and all this good stuff.
That's when you go, how are you? And he goes, good, thank you.
And you're like, exactly. One word answer. I was like, Christian, one word answer Pulisic. You know, thank you so much for your time.